Alright, okay. This one, social explanations of aggression, or social psychological explanations of aggression. You need to make sure that you know that as a term. They could ask it as a bigger question about outline or discuss one social psychological explanation of aggression. We're going to go through social learning theory today, but that's only one of, I think, at least three that you're going to need to know. All right, so that's the bigger question, that's the bigger title, but this is just going to be about social learning theory. Okay, and everything's going to be about aggression. You may have learnt it, AS with regards to other things and just types of learning or children or whatever, but this we always need to make sure we relate it back to aggression. So I'll try and give you a few examples, write examples in or think of your own, because ever in a question, when we look at the big question in a second, you need examples to really show what your understanding is. Okay. So the biggest question you could be asked in this section, there it is: discuss the social learning theory of human aggression. 16 marks, write that somewhere on your notes, make sure that when you're thinking about it, can you answer that? We'll look at within class at making a plan to answer that, but that's the most you'll actually need to know. Discuss the social learning theory of human aggression. Okay, a few bits to get in early. This isn't a major one, but just you need to understand the difference between direct learning and indirect learning. So direct learning is operant conditioning and classical, in fact, but operant. Happens to you, boy goes, beats up kid, gets toy, the toy is the reward. All right. So that's operant conditioning. That's direct learning. That's not necessarily what we're talking about today, but you need to know the difference between direct learning, operant conditioning, direct learning. Okay, Bandura, if you haven't heard that name before, he is the main man. He does everything to do with social learning theory and observational learning and things like that. Okay, what observational learning is? Okay, it's mainly children, and most of the experiments are around children and how it happens, but obviously it still happens within adults. Okay, so it's indirect, it doesn't happen to us, and that's the key point you need to get. Direct is to us. Okay, the child does something, gets reinforced, punished, whatever it may be. This is indirect, so it's not happening to us, it's happening to somebody else, and we're learning through it. So some of the key terms: role models, okay, observational learning, so we're observing and learning by watching. Right? And then we've got this other key word, of vicarious reinforcement. And you need to make sure you understand vicarious. The way I always think about it is, somebody said to me when I was younger about, you're trying to live vicariously through somebody. If you're trying to live vicariously through somebody, you're trying to find out what they're doing, and you're kind of getting their positives and negatives through them. Sometimes a parent might be told that they're living vicariously through their children if they're making their child want to be a professional football player. Right? That's living vicariously through them. So it's about consequences of others. Okay, so reinforcement and punishment. The one I always use here is Suarez. He might be slightly outdated, but when he was, in the Premiership and he was biting people, it was about whether he was going to get punished or not. Everyone was saying, look, we've got to punish him. We've got to make sure he gets 20 weeks ban, 100, whatever it is. Never let him play again, because of this idea of vicarious reinforcement. If Suarez had bitten somebody and got away with it, social learning theory, observational learning theory would say that everyone the following week in football pitches, whether they're 5 years old, 10 years old, 15 years old, would be biting people because they've seen it as something one of their role models has done. All right. This other term of likelihood of imitation there. Everything is about the likelihood of imitation, the likelihood of it happening again, basically. So if something gets vicariously reinforced, then my likelihood of imitation will go up. If something gets vicariously punished, so Suarez gets a 100-week ban, banned from football or whatever, then the likelihood of imitation is reduced. Right? So you need to make sure that you get likelihood of imitation and understand what that actually means. Okay, so Bandura said that there are 4 cognitive conditions, and you need to know these in this basic term, and that's it. All right. So you have to have notes on these 4 points and understand them. All right. The way I've written ARM there, I think it's probably covered by my thing, but ARRM. Right. ARM. Right. The 4 cognitive conditions that are needed for observational learning to take place. Okay. So if I'm going to learn from watching somebody, if I'm going to learn from watching Suarez, I'm going to learn from watching a role model, watching somebody on TV, then I have to go through these 4 cognitive conditions Bandura said. First one is attention. Then I've written opposites. Obviously, I have to pay attention to what is going on, what that person does. Right? That's simple. If I'm not looking, I'm not watching, then I'm obviously not going to be able to replicate the behaviour. Right? The second is retention. So how was it done? What did he do? How did that boy get the toy from that other person? What did they do? Oh, they did this, they did that. They hit him in the face, they pulled his ear. Whatever it is, so it's actually retention, making a representation of what happened in your mind. How did they go about that aggressive behaviour in this instance? All right. Third is reproduction. Okay, you must be able to perform the act. Okay, I always try and not think about it, but it's the idea of, if you're too short to grab their ears, then you obviously can't reproduce that particular type of aggressive action. Right? It's a little bit more complicated than that, but think about it, that you have to be able to do it. Okay, you have to have hands, you have to be able to grab it, you have to have learned, which ear to pull, or which part of the head to punch, or what type of kick hurts the most. All right, so you have to be able to reproduce that. All right, and the last stage, the 4th stage, is motivation, and that's about your expectation of it. Okay, if I do this thing that I've paid attention to, this thing that I've remembered, and this thing that I now know I can do, if I do it, am I going to get a reward? Is it going to be good for me? Is it going to be bad for me? What's the punishment going to be? Is Mr. Hastings going to catch me? Is blah, blah, blah. So is it motivating or not? And at any point of these 4 conditions, if one of them isn't there, then obviously you can't take part in observation with them. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, one of the major factors around all of this, and another AO1 kind of paragraph here, should be a separate bit of notes, is this term of self-efficacy. Now, I may have spoken about it with you this year, you may have heard it in other terms, but you need to understand it with regards to aggression, self-efficacy and aggression. So you want to get this definition written down. One's belief in one's ability to succeed in specific situations or tasks. It's basically, if I use aggression, am I going to win? Is it going to work? Is it going to be successful? Right? And you may be somebody that's violent because you're big and strong, so therefore your self-efficacy is higher because you think, actually, yeah, I can do this and I'm most likely to succeed. If you're somebody, or you're not violent, you might be big, you might be small, whatever, but if you think, you know what, violent doesn't work for me, it never has, and if I hit someone, they're going to hit me back and I've got no chance, then your self-efficacy around aggression is very low. Right? And you can have self-efficacy in lots and lots of different things. You could be self-efficacy about grades. You might have really high self-efficacy in your ability to get A's. Okay, so you believe that if you put your time and effort into a task, you'll succeed. So that's self-efficacy. But just make sure you know it as a general term, but also just into definitions of aggression. And there I've put the child and the toy again. If aggression succeeds, so a child goes over, hits somebody, okay, or grabs their ear, does whatever, takes the toy's brilliant, there's no negative repercussions of it, then that will mean that the cycle continues. I'm more likely to use my aggression again because it worked, because my self-efficacy got higher and higher and higher. Okay, so children that use it and get success, obviously their self-efficacy goes up, so then it's more likely to use it. And we're back to that likelihood of behaviour, likelihood of it continuing in the future. Right? So understand the ideas of self-efficacy and the opposite as well. If you go to use aggression and it doesn't work and you fail, then obviously, prior to all of this kind of understanding from Bandura, we know now, obviously that would mean that we are less likely to do it. Okay, you need to watch this rather than me talk about it. Make sure you make notes, sample what the 3 conditions were, a method. So in a method you should have, if there's people about it, how long it went off, or all of these are separate things, and the idea of the findings and what they went. The second one here is good just to sit and watch, and it gives you a better understanding of what went on and the kind of bigger picture of it. So at this point, please click on it and make those and then come back. Click on it. Okay, you should be back. We're now on to AO3, so you should have a pretty good understanding of observational learning, vicarious learning, direct, indirect, the Bobo-Doll study, self-efficacy. These terms should now mean something to you. If they don't, go back, start again, add to your notes. Moving on to AO3. So the first one is a study that supports. Okay, and I've called it training grounds. All right, Poulin and Booth in 2000. They looked at aggressive boys aged between 9 and 12, and these aggressive boys made friendships with other aggressive boys. Now, you may have your own examples of that. Okay? You may be thinking about your brother or your friends at school, or you even. All right? At a certain age, maybe between 9 and 12, when you gravitated towards somebody, or maybe you still are. Maybe you are an aggressive person and your friends are aggressive people. Okay, that's what they found. They gravitated towards each other, and they were long-lasting relationships. They're mutually reinforcing, because an aggressive person with an aggressive person, they go and do something aggressive, they both applaud each other. They're going to say, well done, thanks for that, brilliant. Oh, you were so good, what a great punch in the face. Oh no, you were good, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So that's what we mean by mutually reinforcing. So aggressive boys found aggressive boys. And these alliances were gained to use resources. Again, you might have your own examples of this, of kind of bullies or groups going around the playground and being aggressive, and then by being aggressive and together, they actually got more resources. And the resources, I've said toys again. It might be toys, it might be, you know, the football, it might be the best place to be in the playground. But whatever it was, they using aggression. These aggressive boys got more resources. Okay, and obviously that gang that we're now calling them of aggressive boys going around would go, well done, and they continually reinforce each other, reinforce each other, reinforce each other. So their aggressive behaviour grows. Okay, and all of that, as an AO3 point, agrees with the predictions of social learning theory. So we're putting it back, making sure in our paragraph that we're linking it back to being a positive for social learning theory. It agrees with the predictions. Okay, we cannot explain all aggression. This comes up quite a lot, this idea of can it explain everything, can't it explain everything? All right? And you may know these terms now, or you may just need to make notes on them. And as we go through aggression, the module, you'll get to understand a little bit more. So when you look back over your notes, you'll actually understand. So it explains proactive aggression. This idea of, in the situation, you've taken my toy, I'm going to hit you and get my toy back. Hot-blooded and angry. Right? Explains those quick situations where somebody resorts to aggression to get something that they want, either back or something from the playground or whatever it may be. Explains that really well, social learning theory. Right? But what it doesn't explain is this idea of hostility, this keeping back of anger, doing something cold-blooded, doing something, you know, a week later. Maybe some of you know someone, yourself, whatever, you might be cold-blooded. You might be a bit more, I'm going to get them back, but it's going to be in a month's time or whatever. And so social learning theory can't explain that second type of aggression. And we'll look at that with Berkowitz. Again, we'll learn what he said, and maybe his explanation of aggression is slightly better at explaining some types of aggression. Okay, you're going to have one big paragraph here, or two if you need to, about the methodological problems with the Bobo-Doll study. There's lots. It's a fantastic study in the sense that it was groundbreaking, and people didn't really realise quite how much the media and watching aggression had an effect. Okay, but I've gone through here some of the things that you could talk about in yours. Choose your favourite, write a little bit about each. Lab study, you probably know that already, that everything was controlled. However, right, its short-term effects. Can we, you know, is it, you know, actually finding something that it says, or is it just because you're in this lab? Can we extrapolate it? Can we generalize it to the wider population? This idea of demand characteristics there. But look, mummy, there was somebody was quoted. They overheard a child coming in, you know, holding mum's hand and walking past the room where the Bobo-Doll is, and saying, "Look, mummy, there's the doll we have to hit." So the experimenters, Bandura, weren't very good at hiding the aims of the experiment. So the children and the mums knew what they had to do before they went in. So that's demand characteristics. Would they have actually hit that doll if the aims of the experiment hadn't been so clear for the parents and the children. The next bit is this idea of the Bobo doll. If you picture the Bobo doll, it's a big kind of wide-based doll that you hit and it bounces back up. Right? If I was to put them in one of those in the class when you come in at the door, every one of you, whether you're aggressive or not, are probably going to want to give it a little whack because it's that way inclined. Right? And if you give it a whack, give it a hit, does that mean you're actually aggressive or not? Okay, and lots of people argue that the idea of the Bobo doll hitting it is not aggressive. The same as in other things, with playing noise, is that aggression? Is putting someone's hand in ice cold water aggression? Is putting something, recording something in an interview or putting something on a scale aggression? So there's always this problem about, are we measuring aggression properly? Right? And that idea of the Bobo doll being basically made to hit is quite kind of leads to demand characteristics in itself. And the last one I just put old school. It's a very simple A3 paragraph, but if you can write it, then it's okay. It's about the fact that this is a very old experiment now, and their findings may not be applicable to current society. So that's basically. Okay, Huseman and Eron, 2013. This is a real-life application or a real-world application, RLA or RWA. Right? Basically, what they found is adding on a bit more, about how we learn from models and the media. Right? And they said if media models were appealing to the child, e.g., sense of humour, good-looking, or you felt as if you were like them, then vicarious learning was just as powerful as direct learning. So it could always have been argued that direct learning, I go to do something, I get reinforced or punished, then we know that has a big effect. This is arguing that observational learning is just as powerful, and vicarious learning is just as powerful as it's happening to you. So it adds validity to social learning theory and observational theory, saying that it's just as powerful as direct learning. Hopefully that makes sense. Cultural differences. So if a theory is going to be perfect, if we want a perfect theory, then we will find it in every single culture. It will be able to explain every single behaviour across the world, in every single gender, for every single age. Right? So whenever we're looking at a theory, you want to think about that. And this one is about cultural differences. And there's a Kung Sun tribe, in the Kalahari Desert, and they are completely different in the way that they interact with their children, the way that they are. They have no aggression in their social norms, so there's no aggression to be seen. No one's hitting each other, no one's wrestling as children. There's none of that going on. There's no direct enforcement, so there's no positive or negative enforcement. They're not saying, oh, don't do that, or I'll hit you, or I'll hit you because you've done that, or whatever it may be. There's no enforcement whatsoever. The parents use no aggression as discipline, so they don't, even aggression in the sense of, pulling a kid by his arm, putting him in the naughty step. That is, in some ways, aggression, showing that I am the boss, I am the leader, I am the parent, you will go on the naughty step, I will put you there. Okay, you might even have aggression of just, the very simple of, a slap on the bum or whatever it may be. So there's none of that whatsoever, right? Because of that, there's no real use for vicarious learning. So there's no one for me to learn aggression from. There isn't, I can watch Big Brother, he's aggressive, because no one is aggressive. And I've put there, what would the social learning prediction be? And it would, if you haven't worked it out, be that there should be no aggression. There's no one for me to learn from. There's no one using it on me. There's no direct experience. There's no vicarious learning. My parents aren't using it. There isn't any aggression to be seen on TV or anything like that. So I shouldn't be aggressive, right? But it has been found that there is aggression in that culture, in that society, in that tribe in the desert. Okay, and so therefore that is disagreeing with social learning theory. It is saying that social learning theory cannot explain why that happens. There must be something else. There must be evolutionary traits or genetic or something else explaining why aggression is happening here. All right, so that's a big AO3 point, a negative of social learning theory, because it can't explain this cultural difference. And that's it. Yep.